Dr. Mara Feldman's first impression of the Tuesday night support group was that they had nothing in common but loss. She counted 7 faces arranged in a shaky crescent of plastic chairs. Gabriella, an accountant whose husband had died in the Mid-Atlantic Flight 477 crash. Mason, a firefighter who had dragged 4 men out of a warehouse before it collapsed on the rest of his crew. Danny, the 17-year-old who survived the Maple Ridge High shooting. Walter, a retired machinist whose daughter's drunk driver fiancé had run a red light. And 3 others, each with stories that made Mara brace her diaphragm and breathe the way she taught clients. Slowly in through the nose, pause, gently out. They were her first mixed event group, assembled because the clinic's funding had been cut in half and the board wanted fewer specialized sessions. Mara had privately protested. Trauma, she believed, had different dialects. Plane crash grief spoke with different consonants than shooting survivor grief or vehicular manslaughter grief. Yet here they sat, wrists resting on thighs, eyes traveling the floor tiles, as if waiting for instructions in a language none of them quite spoke. "Thank you for coming," she began, taking the only chair with armrests, the quasi-throne of the facilitator. "My job isn't to tell you what to feel. It's to create a space where every feeling, rage, numbness, guilt, can be spoken aloud." Several heads nodded. Mason, built like a felled oak, kept his gaze fixed on the fire exit sign above her. Danny hugged a purple backpack to her ribs. Silence throbbed until Gabriella breathed 2 syllables. "We know." Good. Recognition mattered. Mara opened the floor. They shared in short, pained exhalations, like people blowing on soup that would never cool. By the last 10 minutes, something unexpected surfaced. Walter mentioned that when the nights felt longest, he talked to Uri, an imaginary friend from childhood who had recently come back. Danny's eyes widened. "You have one too?" she asked, startled into plain voice. Mason shifted. "Mine's named Nora," he admitted. Gabriella murmured that her little companion was Seth. 3 other survivors nodded, hesitant but relieved. Mara made a mental note. Shared hallucination, shared coping strategy. She asked each member to describe their friend. Oddly, the details converged. Same height, child-sized, 4 feet and some inches. Same gender ambiguity, small frame, large dark eyes, gray hooded sweatshirt with the hood always up. Same voice. "Sounds like TV static underneath words," Mason said. Danny likened it to a cassette that's been chewed. Different names, though. Mara ended session 1 floating on a swarm of hypotheses. She'd seen mass suggestion before. News coverage of a tragedy often seeded imagery. But the precision here unsettled her. After the group left, she tidied the meeting room, pushing chairs back into a semicircle. On impulse, she descended the building's narrow stairwell to the storage basement. Since funding cuts, boxes of out-of-print manuals and folding tables had choked the below-ground floor. Yet, when she flicked on the bare bulb, she smelled sawdust. Someone had been down here with a handsaw recently. A clean plank of pine lay across 2 cement blocks. 3 screws glittered in a neat row, as if placed rather than dropped. She reminded herself that the clinic shared facilities with the outpatient physical therapy department. Maybe a PT tech had made quick repairs. Still, she photographed the setup, emailed herself the picture, and forgot to delete the paranoia that insisted on staying. Session 2 began with rain flinging itself at the windows. Mara opened with a grounding exercise, but Walter raised his hand. "The kid, Uri, says we ought to do introductions different this time." His tone was apologetic, like a student offering the wrong answer he felt compelled to give. Mara's skin tingled. "What kind of different?" "Each of us should say what we're willing to build," Mason said, surprising himself with the confidence in his baritone. "Build?" she repeated. But already Gabriella was speaking softly about bringing in copper wire, and one of the others volunteered she could get hold of lab-grade glass from a cousin at the university. The conversation accelerated, bypassing her authority. Words like coil, housing, induction, conduit floated in a current of intense purpose. Danny sketched something in a spiral notebook, 3 concentric circles intersected by a lightning bolt shape. It looked neither like art nor like the doodles of a bored teen. It looked like an engineering schematic. "Slow down," Mara interrupted. Her voice sounded thin against their quickening excitement. She reminded them the group's purpose was processing grief, not, well, construction. But the moment she steered them back to feelings, they became dull and distant again, like radios tuned to silent frequencies. Only when they spoke of the project did color return to their cheeks. She moved the meeting along, ended with a breathing exercise, and collected their check-in cards. On Mason's card she read, "Sorry, we need the device. You'll understand." Under signature, he'd drawn the same triple circle symbol Danny had. Mara stayed late again, heavy with unease. She let herself into the basement. The pine plank was gone. In its place stood a small sawhorse and half-assembled wooden frame the size of a phone booth lying on its side, as if someone meant to build a box around a missing occupant. The screws were gone from the floor. In a coffee can sat a mix of wood screws and copper tacks. She turned in a slow circle, trying not to imagine 7 clients hunched at midnight, hammering under the bare bulb's light. She turned off the switch and climbed the stairs quickly, not running, but fast enough that her calf muscles quivered. Thursday morning, she met with Dr. Valdez, the clinic's medical director. She carefully narrated what she had observed, warning him it sounded stranger than it perhaps was. Valdez was a thin man whose reading glasses magnified his skepticism. "Group delusion," he said. "Trauma can precipitate shared fantasy. Kids with imaginary friends sometimes keep them through adulthood when under stress. But the basement, the building, they're taking materials from somewhere. Patients can't access the basement after hours. They must be stealing keys." Valdez shrugged. "Even if they are, it's safer than self-harm. Let them work through it a bit, as long as no one's endangered." The conversation ended with his meager promise to increase security patrols. Mara left his office carrying more doubt than when she'd entered. With no allies upstairs, she sought answers herself. She Googled combinations of 3 concentric circles lightning bolt device, finding only old patents for Tesla coils and a tabletop science fair gadget that lit up fluorescent bulbs. None matched the drawing. She went deeper, stumbling into forums full of half-mad enthusiasts discussing thin membrane machines, devices rumored to open breaches. She recognized the sketch, a Gillen gate, a myth traced back to a 1970s cult that believed grief could tear a slit between worlds. The gate, they claimed, let survivors barter sorrow for a glimpse of the dead. The cult burned itself alive in a barn before finishing construction. Mara slammed her laptop shut. Even if the gate was folklore, the group was assembling something physically real. Her ethical obligation was clear. Keep patients from harm. Yet a voice, quiet as lint, whispered, "What if it works?" Her wife, Claire, had died of lymphoma 4 years earlier. The urge to peek beyond the membrane clenched Mara's stomach before she could bat it away. Session 3 arrived faster than she was ready for. She set up a flip chart listing goals for the evening. 1. Emotional articulation. 2. Collective coping strategies. 3. Safety plan. The group trickled in carrying oversized tote bags. Danny's backpack bulged. Mason's duffel rattled with what sounded like metal rods. Mara told herself to confiscate whatever they'd brought, but when she opened her mouth, her tongue felt stapled to her palate. The group's eyes appeared brighter than fluorescent lighting allowed. "Shall we tell her?" Walter asked the room. Gabriella nodded gravely. They turned to Mara with a synchronousness that made her step back. "It isn't personal," Mason said. "We just need some hours downstairs. Tonight." Mara inhaled. "You can't access the basement without keys." The word died as Danny extended an open palm. Clinic master keys glittered. "Nora says these were left for us," she said. "Left by whom?" Security, apparently. Mara cursed under her breath. She pictured 7 traumatized people wielding power tools at midnight, possibly electrocuting themselves. "I can't let you," she said, finding her voice. "It'll help us heal," Gabriella insisted. "Seth promises. We'll all get closure, even you." "Even me?" The accountant's eyes softened. "Claire, right? He said your wife's name was Claire." Mara's hands trembled. She knew she had never uttered Claire's name in group. Her personal history stayed outside sessions. "Who told you that?" "Seth," Gabriella repeated. Mara scraped a chair, sat before her knees buckled. She should call 911, but what would she report? Clients claiming imaginary instructions, possibly stolen keys. Police would ask for names, records, statements that would shatter the therapeutic alliance. She envisioned squad cars, handcuffs, forced psych holds. The group stared at her with a mixture of pity and urgency. "I want to see it," she said suddenly. If containment failed, observation was next. Keep them safe by going with them. Mason exhaled relief. "Okay." Together they crept to the stairwell. No alarms sounded. The basement's bulb cast their shadows enormous across concrete. The wooden frame had grown into an arch rising 7 feet. The pine plank now a threshold. Coils of copper wire spiraled the columns like vines. Atop the structure sat a glass semicircle etched with that triple ring emblem. From Danny's backpack came a spool of silver filament. She threaded it with unchildlike steadiness, hands guided by memory that clearly wasn't hers alone. Mara hovered beside the coffee can of screws, aware that one command, "Stop," could topple everything. Instead, she watched. The group moved with hive-mind precision, anticipating each other's reach. Walter fit an induction coil the size of a donut into a recess. Gabriella tightened bolts with a torque wrench. Sparks occasionally popped, blue and sharp. "You know what you're doing?" Mara asked. "No," Mason admitted, "but Nora does." Mara scanned for the childlike figure. Nothing. Just their bent backs, their breath. Yet in the rustle of wires, she thought she heard a hissy whisper, the static voice they'd described. She stepped closer. The arch pulsed faintly, though no power source was visible. Her clinical mind catalogued hazards, risk of fire, of collapse. But a deeper part felt drawn to that pulse the way a moth senses a porch light. At exactly 10:12 p.m., Danny announced, "It's ready." She flicked a switch made of 2 screwdriver shanks taped together. A low hum unfurled, draping the basement in vibration. The glass semicircle glowed dull orange. 7 survivors arranged themselves before the arch. Mara, breathing hard, joined the line. "What happens now?" she asked. "Door opens," Danny said. The glow expanded into the frame, filling it like rising water. Colors inside the arch flickered: bruise blue, autumn gold, hospital green. Mara smelled ozone and lilacs. And then shapes, silhouettes of people walking toward them from inside the light. Gabriella's hands flew to her mouth. "Alejandro," she sobbed, naming her dead husband. Walter whispered his daughter's name. Danny reached as if to hug someone visible to her alone. Mara's heart hammered. A form stepped forward wearing Claire's favorite red winter coat. The figure's face was hazy, as if seen through heavy rain, but Mara recognized posture, tilt of head. Claire raised a hand. Mara staggered, tears combing her cheeks. She wanted to hurl herself into the archway. Instead, she forced her feet to root. Something was wrong. Claire's outline shimmered, edges dissolving into pixels. Claire had never been that tall. This thing had elongated proportions, limbs stretching a bit too far before snapping back. It was an approximation, a mask. She felt the stare of someone right beside her. Turning, she saw a child in a gray hoodie, 4 feet tall, hood shadowing dark reflective eyes like black marbles. Mouth fixed in a thin line. No lips moved, but she heard the rip-paper voice. "We kept our promise. Let them step through." You too. She remembered folklore. A gate demands a toll. What do you want in return? Mara asked aloud. The static voice crackled. Empty places in your world for what's waiting in ours. Mara envisioned 7 survivors vanishing, replaced by whatever stood behind those human holograms. In her mind, an equation balanced. 7 tragedies had freed 7 seats on Earth. The device, the imaginary friend, were recruiting. No, she whispered. But the group had begun moving. Gabriella already had 1 foot on the pine plank. Stop! Mara shouted, grabbing Mason's arm. Her voice ricocheted off cinder blocks. Mason twisted free, eyes glassy, transfixed by the fatherly form inside the glow. You can't know it's them, she pleaded. Don't take this from us, Gabriella rasped, tears shining. Listen to me. Mara turned, addressing the hooded child. Show them the truth. The figure cocked its head. Whether from curiosity or arrogance, it complied. The glow flickered. The apparition stuttered, replaced for half a second by pale, many-jointed beings, limbs folding like umbrellas, eyeless faces with ridges where mouths should be. Then the gate flicked back to comforting illusions. Gabriella screamed and stumbled away. Walter cursed. Danny covered her ears, shaking. Mara seized the moment. She snatched the coffee can, hurling screws against the arch's coil. Sparks erupted. Mason shouted as copper wire snapped, lashing his wrist. The hum crescendoed to an alarm pitch. Light within the frame convulsed, colors spattering like a dying screen. The hooded child advanced. Under the hood, its face elongated, splitting at the center to reveal a vertical row of phosphorescent teeth. Mara felt her bladder threaten release, yet she swung the heavy coffee can again, smashing glass, severing silver filament. A thunderclap of discharging energy blew out the basement bulb, plunging them into darkness. Silence, then a pitter of debris settling. Someone whimpered. Danny. Mara found her phone, thumbed flashlight. The arch was a tangle of smoking timber and melted wire. No glow, no figures. The hooded child was gone, or never there. She checked each survivor. Superficial injuries. Mason's welt, Walter's cut palm, Gabriella's eardrum likely ringing. All breathing, all dazed but alive. We're going upstairs, Mara said, voice iron now. No one argued. They emerged into a hallway flashing red with alarm strobes. Valdez must have triggered the fire system when circuits overloaded. Paramedics arrived. Police followed, firing questions. Mara answered tersely. Improperly stored solvents combusted. No, patients not at fault. She leveraged every ounce of authority to keep the group from cuffs. At dawn, after ER clearances, she watched them climb into taxis. None looked at her. Something between shame and gratitude hovered in the damp air. Inside the clinic, investigators taped off the basement. A detective asked what had really happened. Mara offered a grief counselor's version. They attempted an art therapy construct, wires shorted, minor fire. The detective eyed the scorched frame, gears fused into glass. Art? He repeated, skeptical. She shrugged. A professional secret. The clinic board suspended all group sessions until further notice. Mara took the reprimand quietly. Weeks passed. None of the 7 returned for individual appointments. She phoned, numbers disconnected, emails bounced. She feared they blamed her for destroying their chance to reunite with loved ones, even if that chance was lethal illusion. She accepted the loneliness as penance. One night, while locking her office, she heard childlike footsteps in the stairwell. She froze. A shape stood 2 flights below, small, hooded, eyes reflecting emergency exit light. We can try again, the voice coaxed, softer now, enticing. Claire waits just beyond the tear. Mara envisioned copper coils, damp concrete, static voices, and the momentary reveal of what lurked beneath. She swallowed. No, she said. "Find someone else." The shape tilted its head. A slow smile opened wider than any child's could. Then it faded, edges unraveling like smoke sucked through a vent. Mara steadied herself against the rail. She felt grief rising, raw and familiar. But underneath, like bedrock beneath soil, she sensed something resolute. The gate was broken. The survivors were free agents again. Whatever else the hooded thing tried, at least one human would resist it by name. She rested a hand over her heart, where Claire lived, unreachable yet safe, and climbed the stairs toward the surface.